Well, we have plenty more reaction of Tennessee being a 3 seed instead of a 2 seed. A lot of national coverage on this story. Plus, Mike Wilson of Knox News stops by to give us his take. And we'll get into Twitter Tuesday questions coming up in segment 3. All that and more here on a Tuesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into it. This is your Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Those new to the show, welcome. I'm a radio personality at 99.1 The Sports Animal. That's the flagship station for the University of Tennessee. I also write for the rival site covering Tennessee. That is VolQuest.com. You can find this podcast every single weekday, plus post-game podcast during postseason play like last weekend and this weekend coming up. Looking forward to that. Of course, this show is on YouTube. We're almost there to 1,000 subscribers. Continue to support the show on YouTube. This episode of Locked On Vols is brought to you by StatHero. StatHero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/lockedon. Got Mike Wilson coming up here in just a couple of moments, but I wanted to continue to kind of expand on this conversation about Tennessee being a 3 seed. Again, at the end of the day, Tennessee a 3 seed. It's not like Tennessee was disrespected, in my opinion. You're a 3 seed. That's some of the top 12 teams in the country, right? And so Tennessee has a great chance to make a deep postseason run. We'll look at the bracket here in just a moment. Do I think Tennessee should be a 2 seed? Absolutely. But I do like the draw a little bit better. Let's look at that bracket right now. Tennessee, of course, is a 3 seed in the South region. The 2 seed, of course, is Villanova, and the 1 seed up at the top is Arizona. If Tennessee moves on and moves out of the first weekend of play, of course, would have to take down Longwood and then likely Colorado State and or Michigan. You move on to the Sweet 16 where you'll square off against Villanova. And, of course, that's going to be a tough challenge because Villanova really took it to Tennessee earlier this year. But much like Duke taking down Kentucky and Gonzaga at a neutral site way back in the mid-December, Duke's a different ball club right now. Tennessee's a much different ball club right now. So it'll be a challenge, no doubt. But I'm not weighing heavily that onslaught that Villanova put on Tennessee way back in November. I'm just not going to do it. So yeah, you'll have Villanova in the Sweet 16. But if you win that game, you move on. You play Arizona in the Elite Eight. Same situation, but this time Tennessee actually took down Arizona. But that game was on December the 22nd. So at least you're very familiar with these two squads that you square off likely in Sweet 16 and Elite Eight play, of course, if it's chalk all the way down the bracket. So I like that draw for Tennessee. You look at what it would have been if it was the 2 seed in the West region where Duke is right now. Duke would take on the winner of Michigan State and Davidson in the round of 32. I'd much rather play Michigan and or, of course, Colorado State than Michigan State and Tom Izzo, if that's, was my opinion. So that would be your round of 32 matchup. The Sweet 16 matchup would likely be Texas Tech. Of course, again, that's a team that you've already played this year. Texas Tech did beat you. Of course, it was a rock fight. Nobody could really make a basket. But Texas Tech would be your matchup in the Sweet 16. If you moved on to the Elite Eight, you have Gonzaga there as well, the top seed overall. So I much prefer Tennessee's a 3 seed in the South than Tennessee is a 2 seed in the West. Now, that's if we're comparing with, Tennessee were to take Duke's spot. Of course, Wisconsin was the first 3 seed on that line. Tennessee is the second 3 seed of all the 3 seeds. So I'm just kind of picking and choosing here. But I really do like Tennessee's draw. I think it's favorable compared to, what it could have been. So I found that a little interesting there. Let's move on. Some more kind of notes here. And I spoke a little bit on this yesterday and comparing Tennessee with the likes of some other teams that it could have taken a spot on the seed line. That being Auburn, a 2 seed, Duke, a 2 seed, Purdue, a 2 seed, and Wisconsin, a 3 seed. Actually, Purdue is a 3 seed, excuse me. Purdue is that 3 seed in the East region. But nonetheless, let's look at how they stack up. Tennessee, a 26-7 record. Auburn, a 27-5 record. Duke, a 28-6 record. Purdue, a 27-7 record. Wisconsin, a 24-7 record. In the net, Tennessee's 7th. Auburn is 11th, Duke is 12th, Purdue is 13th, Wisconsin is 24th. KenPom rankings, Tennessee is 7th, Auburn is 10th, Duke is 12th, Purdue is 14th, Wisconsin is 34th. The BPI, Tennessee is 5th, Auburn is 12th, Duke is 11th, Purdue is 10th, Wisconsin is 27th. You get the drift here, right? Strength of schedule, Tennessee's is 4th, Auburn is 42nd, Duke is 67th, Purdue is 37th, Wisconsin is 18th. Out of conference strength of schedule, Tennessee is 16th, Auburn is 80th, Duke is 116th, Purdue is 228th, Wisconsin is 42nd. Again, we're nitpicking here, but Tennessee's well out in front of the other three teams here, and two of those are 3 seeds. Two of those are 2 seeds, and the other 2 are 3 seeds. Everybody's got a good home record. Tennessee and Auburn, of course, undefeated at 16-0. Duke is 15-3. Purdue is 16-1. Wisconsin 12-4. Away record, Tennessee does have just a 6-5 record, but Purdue's got a 5-5 record. Auburn 8-3. Duke 9-2. Wisconsin 9-2. Neutral sites, Tennessee is 4-2. Auburn is 3-2. Duke is 4-1. Purdue is 6-1. And Wisconsin is 3-1. I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but again, I'm putting Tennessee out there first because it's the most impressive of the stat line. Quad 1 wins. Tennessee has more quad 1 wins than any of these other teams, almost twice as many as Duke. Get this. Tennessee has an 11-7 record in quad 1 play. Duke has a 6-2 record. Auburn 8-5. Purdue 8-6, Wisconsin 9-3. Quad 2, Tennessee's undefeated at 5-0, so is Auburn at 7-0. Duke has 3 quad 2 losses. 6-3 is the record for Duke. Very interesting. Purdue 6-1. Wisconsin has 2 quad 2 losses. 7-2 record. Quad 3, Tennessee's 4-0. Auburn's 8-0. Duke is 8-1. Duke has a quad 3 loss. Purdue 7-0. Wisconsin has 2 quad 3 losses. 4-2. So again, you can make the argument that Tennessee should be a 2 seed in place of Duke, but there's no argument whatsoever that Wisconsin should be at the number 1 3 seed ahead of Tennessee. It just makes no sense to me. Again, is this the end of the world? No, it is not the end of the world. Tennessee's still a 3 seed. Tennessee still has every opportunity to advance onto this tournament. Tennessee's biggest challenge will be Tennessee. That's the case for every single game it plays. We watch Tennessee basketball. We know how it is. Joe Lunardi's not the issue here. Joe Lunardi's not the enemy. Joe Lunardi picked Tennessee to be in his Final Four. Keep in mind, Lunardi always says the committee will do this. The committee will do this. He's not trying to burn his sources. Now, I think he handled himself so poorly during the selection show, wrap-ups and when he was doing interviews after the selection committee kind of announced the field of play. I thought he did horribly on TV after the SEC Tournament Championship. More on that in a moment from Rick Barnes on Monday. Boy, did he have some things to say about in his Monday availability about how essentially the SEC tournament matters nothing to those who are already locked in the tournament. So Joe Lunardi's not the issue here. He's not the enemy. He doesn't hate Tennessee, in my opinion. He's going off what he believes and what his sources are telling him that the committee will do. That's his job. That's what he did. ESPN had Tennessee's back. Jay Billis had Tennessee's back. Clark Kellogg had Tennessee's back. Jerry Palm had Tennessee's back. I mean, Matt Norlander had Tennessee's back. I mean, this is a national conversation, not just a conversation here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So it's really interesting, man. At the end of the day, we're going to kind of stop talking about this now because we got to look forward to Longwood and the potential of Michigan and Colorado State. But let it be known, I mean, Tennessee got jobbed here in terms of being a 2 seed or a 3 seed. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, because I think the draw is much better for the University of Tennessee as a 3 seed in the South compared to being a 2 seed in the West where Duke, is right now. And that's likely where Tennessee would have been, if not its 3rd seed in the South. So something to think about. We got Mike Wilson. Can't wait to get his thoughts coming up here in just a couple of moments here on Locked On Vols. Before we get to Mike, though, I do want to remind you about StatHero. StatHero, it's fantastic. It's something that you guys need to be utilizing during the month of March Madness. Anyone take Loyola Chicago a couple years ago, and now your brackets are busted, right? Mine was at that point in time, looking back, but still I had some cash from StatHero's Pick'em that year. And if you haven't checked out this new platform, you are really missing out. StatHero's NCAA single game Pick'ems pits the star players against one another in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take control back of those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players that you know the best with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. StatHero gives you the advantage, resulting in their game, their gamers winning 4 times as often. Why? Because StatHero eliminates the mystery about who or what you're going up against. In addition to their pick'ems, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through and take on head-to-head matchups. They simply post sets of players for you to take on that's with a set of players that you're most comfortable with, that you choose. StatHero is the easiest and fastest way to get all your sports fix. The simple, sleek gameplay will have you playing in minutes, and this is what daily fantasy is truly meant to be, okay? StatHero.com/lockedon. That's how you can sign up for free right now for 100% deposit match. That's StatHero.com/lockedon. Use the promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. StatHero.com/lockedon. 100% deposit match. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Make sure to check out the Locked On Bracket Breakdown. That's March 14th, beginning yesterday, actually, and right here on the Locked On Vols podcast feed and YouTube channel. College basketball experts Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and the betting expert Lee Sterling himself will give you in-depth breakdowns on every single matchup. That is the Locked On Bracket Breakdown. All right, talking college hoops, talking Tennessee's seeding, talking SEC tournament champs. Let's go ahead and bring on our guy, Mike Wilson of the Knox News Sentinel. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time first and foremost. I know it's been so busy, so hectic, but right out of the gates, the breaking news everybody's talking about, Freddie Freeman no longer is going to be a Brave. They trade the farm to get Matt Olson. Instant reaction. What do you got?
Well, that happened during Rick Barnes' presser earlier. And so I had to restrain my tears, which was unfortunate. The writing's been on the wall for so long at this point. It really didn't come off as a surprise because of that. I think the downside to that is everyone in baseball knew it wasn't, or that this is how it was going to shake out. So the A's got a little more out of the Braves, and I think I would have liked to see them trade. Shea Langeliers, I thought, was the bummer to see him go. I've been ready to see Christian Pache go for a minute. So losing Shea Langeliers, the catcher of the future, I thought was a bummer.
Well, it's a new era, certainly for Braves baseball. At least you got a World Series championship out of it, right? So if he's wearing pinstripes this time tomorrow, I understand if he goes to LA, but pinstripes, I can't do it. But anyway, back to what everybody wants to hear. Tennessee, first time since 1979, SEC tournament champions. I talked to our friend, Ryan Shumpert yesterday and was just like, dude, Kennedy Chandler rolled his ankle 3 minutes into this tournament. I thought he could be done. I was surprised he played against Kentucky, honestly. Comes out, is fantastic all weekend long, tournament MVP. Josiah Jordan-James was next level. But Tennessee gets a 3 seed. Overall, your weekend thoughts? It was a fun weekend. You were down there covering it. What are your thoughts on Tennessee overall? And then, of course, the 3 seed announcement from the NCAA Selection Committee.
Yeah, I thought Tennessee was in line for a 2 going into the tournament. I thought their resume already was that of a 2 seed, ahead of a Duke, ahead of a Wisconsin, both of whom were projected as 2s going into the conference tournaments. Wisconsin obviously dropped off after losing to Michigan State. But Wisconsin remained ahead of Tennessee on the overall seed line, which to me was kind of shocking. I don't think it would have changed the geography, but that was still shocking. I think Wisconsin's resume is pedestrian when you're talking 3 seed. It was a surprise. I thought that Tennessee wasn't already in the 2 seed conversation. It was not a surprise to me that they remained a 3 seed. I assumed on how it started that Tennessee wasn't going to jump. Their resume, the knock on it all along has been road losses, not doing as well away from Thompson Bowling Arena. You weren't going to change that on a neutral site. So I wasn't too surprised to see it, but I still think it wasn't necessarily correct. I mean, Tennessee has the second most quad 1 wins in the country, and the only other 3 teams with double-digit quad wins are all 1 seeds. And Tennessee's worst loss is number 30 in the net. So it looks like a 2 seed resume. Landed as a 3 seed, though.
You mentioned Rick Barnes' media availability earlier on Monday afternoon. I want to read some quotes off to you and get your thoughts on this. This is from Rick Barnes. Everybody said we were a 3 seed going into the SEC tournaments. It doesn't look like the tournament helped us at all. And certainly I don't understand a team in the SEC that has 12 games like Texas A&M and playing its best basketball at the end, not making the tournament. It baffles me. It really does. I do believe after Selection Sunday, the chairman of the committee should have a national day of press conferences where you can ask all these questions, not just 3 minutes or 2 minutes, but for people that have really covered college basketball throughout. Your thoughts on that? I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the easiest thing to do for the SEC would do what the ACC does and start your double bye play on Thursday. So you're done on Saturday, if that helps at all. But what are your thoughts on Rick Barnes from those quotes?
Yeah, I mean, to start with the conference tournament element, the comments there, I understand. I mean, Tennessee, when and won an SEC title, you never really expect those Sunday games necessarily to make a massive difference. And I think if Tennessee maybe had an Auburn or an Arkansas in that game, you think maybe it has a bigger chance to boost them. But Texas A&M not being a tournament team, not being a quad one, I don't think it might have ended up sneaking into a quad one. It was right on the fringe going into that game. I think they were 51st before the game. So you weren't going to boost it there, but his point's valid. You know, Tennessee won that. It didn't really end up doing anything for them except maybe moving them from Pittsburgh to Indianapolis, which distance-wise is a slight improvement, but you play on Thursday instead of Friday after playing through the Sunday part of the tournament. So it's kind of splitting hairs at that point, I think. As for the press conference thing, never going to happen, as you said, but at the same time, it goes back to kind of that same thought of there's a lack of accountability, just like there is with officiating. I look back to the Music City Bowl, that overtime play, not getting in the end zone was the ruling on the rush. There was no pool reporter able to talk to officials. That was a request I made, was an opportunity to ask why the ruling was made the way it was. No accountability whatsoever, no opportunity. And you get kind of the same thing here. Of course, it's not coming down to a win and a loss, but understanding why things were picked the way they were, understanding the thought process behind why teams got the seeds that they did, why the SEC tournament didn't seem to have as much of an effect for Tennessee as it could have seemingly in a different situation. But yeah, you don't get to ask those questions. You don't get to ask why Tennessee's resume was never valued as highly as a Duke's. Because, I mean, to be fair, that number 2 seed in Greenville that Auburn and Duke got is definitely what Tennessee coveted. Because that is a Friday. That is a very short trip. Certainly a great situation there. But it just seemed like that was always going to be how it fell with Auburn and Duke, even though Tennessee's resume includes a win over Auburn and on paper is significantly better than Duke's.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because when you have all these committee members going on and talking with the talking heads, I always think that phrase is funny because I'm a talking head. I think it's kind of an insult, but they're making no sense, right? I mean, of course, you had Lenardi talking with Reese Davis the other night. He made no sense. He's not the issue here. He's just doing what his sources told him, and you've got all these other committee members that are taking on. There's no, when asked about Tennessee, there's no good answer. They really have nothing, in my opinion. As we chat with Mike Wilson, Knox News. One other thing from Rick Barnes on Monday, Mike, quotes, if conference tournaments don't mean anything, if the teams already slotted to be in the tournament can't improve their seeding, we should stay at home and let those teams that are trying to get in the tournament fight for that bid. Give our league a chance to get more. Again, this will never happen. But the point he's making is it makes no difference for Tennessee because, like you said, he was a 3 seed going in. There are 3 seeds coming out. They took down, of course, Kentucky for the second time this season. That quad 1 win on Sunday ended up being a quad 1 win for Texas A&M. Picked up another. I mean, it doesn't matter for Tennessee at all. So what's the point playing in a conference tournament if you already have a bid? I thought that was a pretty interesting quote from Rick Barnes. Again, I don't see it ever happening, but it just kind of shows the frustration and I guess the confusion from a guy that's been doing it for 3 decades.
Yeah, and 100%, that's something that's not going to happen. I mean, teams are obligated to go and play in that tournament. There's a lot of money involved, a lot of business at stake, and we all know that's what talks loudest at the end of everything. So that's not going to happen. But the point behind it is what's obviously valid here, which is Texas A&M had an opportunity to go and play for a spot in this NCAA tournament. Mississippi State's in that conversation as well. Vanderbilt wasn't in conversation on the bubble, but if they made a run past Kentucky, which they almost did, they would have maybe had a shot to play on Sunday and play their way into that. But yeah, it's not going to happen. But I thought Barnes's comments overall about Texas A&M, the strength of the SEC, and the resume of a school like Texas A&M were pretty valid. That was something he said Sunday as well down in Tampa, that, and John Calipari talked about it the night before as well, as just the way the SEC profile just doesn't seem to get that value. I think I read that Frank Martin had a comment like that too about, when he was in the Big 12, 9-9 teams got viewed a little bit differently. I believe I saw it from a South Carolina friend this weekend. But yeah, the teams don't get that value. And Texas A&M, the 8-game losing streak and bad losses are what definitely kept them out. But seeing them not even as the first team out, I thought was surprising, just because what they did in Tampa was so impressive. And if Tennessee's not there, Kentucky's not there, maybe Texas A&M does play their way into it, but that's just not how things work.
Notre Dame got in the tournament. Michigan got in the tournament. And like you just pointed out, A&M, not the first team out, the fourth team out. Again, it's very head-scratching. At the end of the day, the 3 seed, 2 seed, who cares? Tennessee's biggest opponent every single game is Tennessee. Tennessee can beat Tennessee more so than an opponent can beat Tennessee. We know that. And, of course, this conversation is going to shift. We're going to start looking towards this weekend's games, but it is very interesting right now. Last thing, get you out of the door, and I can't thank you enough for your time. You're one of the busiest guys here this time of the year, especially with crossover season as well. SEC play, South Carolina, a little homecoming for you, although it's here in Knoxville this weekend. Mike, the job Rick Barnes has done this year, I know you haven't covered his whole career, obviously, but you covered pretty much the extent of it here in Knoxville. The job he's done, one of the best jobs in his career this year with Tennessee, and overall thoughts on Tennessee's draw. It is a 3 seed in the South region, but a chance to meet up with Villanova again in the Sweet 16.
This is about, I think, what you expected this team to be coming into the season. Maybe not a 3 seed, maybe more of that 4-5 line. They were a top 25 team coming into the year. My expectations for this team was it was better on paper than last season's team. From 1 to 5, it just seemed like the roster was much better constructed. The point guard play being the biggest reason for that, bringing in some post players, development, things of that nature. But I also thought after they got bludgeoned at Kentucky that this team was toast, and not simply because they lost that game by 28 points and gave up 107, but because I didn't know who was the leader on the team. I asked Rick Barnes that after the game, basically who was going to walk into Pratt Pavilion the day after that game and yell at everybody and say, this was not okay, this has to change. He said Uros Plavsic and Jemai Meshat. And that, truly, when he said that, and Ryan Shumpert followed up on that too, being like, is that a concern that, your vocal leaders are a freshman who barely plays? And at that time, Uros wasn't prevalent in the playing rotation. He was kind of a marginal rotation guy. That is concerning, remarkably concerning. What this team's done in terms of developing leadership, and that's a credit to Rick Barnes, with Josiah Jordan-James, with Santiago Vescovi, they built something out of this team when they could have really imploded at that point when January was going really poorly. They developed leadership. They clearly all bought in together. They clearly bought into Rick Barnes. And that goes back to what you're asking here. This is a very impressive coaching job, because looking at it from the perspective I had at Kentucky, I didn't know where this team would be come March. And I think it could have gone in a very different direction if he's not the coach, and if these players didn't have the adoration that they showed yesterday for Rick Barnes. I think everything you need to know about this team and this coach was shown in the post-game celebrations, the way that he didn't want to be the center of it, the way that they wanted him to be the center of it, the way that the players sought him out to make him part of it, and the way that everyone just loved on each other. I think that tells you very much about the coaching job that Rick Barnes did this season.
Mike Wilson, Knox News. He will be in Indianapolis covering this basketball team this weekend. He will be on the baseball beat as soon as basketball is over, and he's kind of doing a little bit of it right now. Does fantastic work. Give him a follow on Twitter at @ByMikeWilson. Mike, thanks so much for making a little bit of your time here.
Absolutely had a blast.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Again, Mike Wilson, appreciate him for joining the show. March Madness, it is here right now. That means you need to start thinking about where you're going to run your pool. Just a couple of days left for you to lock in those brackets. You going for the usual, or are you going for the best? The best is at RunYourPool.com. Along with the standard brackets, RunYourPool offers game types like Survivor and Pick'ems. They have options in scoring. They even offer more intel when you make your picks, more so than the ESPN and CBS brackets do. If you got a business, RunYourPool.com can help you take some of that madness and magic and play alongside your employees and some of your clients as well. Clearly, we believe in RunYourPool.com because, like I said, we are running our brackets through there ourselves. There is no truer test than that. If you want to play against some of the best and win a cash prize up to $1,800, join us at runyourpool.com/locked-on. And while you're there, create your own pool from friends and family. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details there are made available. That's runyourpool.com/locked-on for your chance to win a cash prize up to $1,800. We look forward to seeing and beating you there. And BetOnline, that time of the year, college basketball reigns supreme. The tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net, your number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. It's not just football. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering informational needs, including live betting and your favorite Las Vegas casino games. Head on over to the website today or use your mobile device. Sign up for the latest trends and all the action. BetOnline.net. It is where the game starts. Got a final segment left here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. Man, that was some really, really great stuff there from Mike Wilson. If you're catching the podcast here later in the show, I encourage you to go back, listen to that interview. He does some great work covering college basketball, and very, very busy right now, so give it a look. Eric Kane here, the host of Locked On Vols, and each and every Tuesday, we do Twitter Tuesday. We're going to blow through here. We got about 5 or 6 submissions here. Appreciate you guys chiming in. We'll go to Joshua first, and he wants to know, this playoff decision and the strength of the SEC financially and talent-wise, do we start looking at taking the SEC as a whole, maybe separating from the NCAA and forming its own association, or is that too wild of an idea? I know the logistics or something like that would be enormous, but is it viable? Josh, no, that's not too wild of an idea, man. I mean, that's something that's been talked about for a while. I mean, it really has. And you thought that you were trending that way during, whenever kind of near COVID, really, and after the 2020 season, when all the alliances were being formed and the SEC and Big 12 and ACC, and then, or excuse me, I guess it was the Big 10. I can't remember. It's been so long. But during that time period, and the alliances and all that, I mean, there was some real conversation. Could the Power Fives break off? How many of the Power Fives do you need to break off? Can the SEC do it by itself? The SEC is getting bigger now. You're adding Texas and Oklahoma, just more and more, just printing money, right? So that is not a far-fetched idea. I'm not calling for that to happen, but with the lack of institutional control from not just LSU, LOL, but from the NCAA as a whole, these conference commissioners are just like, listen, we're done with you guys. The logic is the Power Fives, or a couple of the Power Fives, maybe a Power 3 or Power 4, can separate, run its own institution, and still schedule some of those other games just to get them in regardless. So I don't know all the logistics either. I don't know if this is feasible in 10 years. I don't know if it's in 15 years. I don't know if it'll ever happen. What I can tell you, Josh, is that this has definitely been talked about, and that's not a wild idea. Absolutely. It all starts with the SEC, though. Now about to be 16 teams here in a couple of years, adding the likes of Texas and, of course, Oklahoma. It's a very viable option. We'll just have to see if it ever gets done. Josh, appreciate you listening from Cali, man. Really, really do appreciate it. Hope all is well. We'll go to Tim. Tim wants to know, can the Vols use this seed line snub as motivation? I mean, I think so. I don't think Tennessee needs any more motivation. Well, I mean, I guess you heard Uros Plavsic and some of the videos and the celebrations on the court saying, put some respect by our name, put some respect by our name. So maybe they do feel that type of way a little bit. I just think with a coach like Rick Barnes, you're getting up to play every single game, right? Sometimes you don't play well, but it's not like you're just, sleepwalking through a game, in my opinion. So I would use it as motivation, but at the end of the day, I would still try to be humble and recognize that it's, again, like I've said it already a couple of times on the show, it's Tennessee that beats Tennessee. It's not Texas A&M. It's not Villanova. It's not Kentucky the first time. It's not Texas. It's Tennessee that beats Tennessee, right? So, we'll see exactly what happens there. We will go on to the Twitter sphere. Why does Joe Lunardi hate Tennessee? Well, I've already mentioned it a couple of times. That's from Logan. Joe Lunardi, I don't believe hates Tennessee. I just think he goes off of what his sources are telling him, and that's the way he shapes his conversation. Similar situation, but much, 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 less publicity, I guess is what you can say. I mean, I have people that tell me stuff about Tennessee football all the time, but I'm not a breaking news guy at all. I'm a reporter, but I'm not really a breaking news guy. I've only broke a couple of modern stories. I don't consider myself that, but there are some things I can't really report on just yet. Because I don't want to burn my source. I don't want to burn that relationship, and I don't want to burn that trust to where they can give me more information too, right? So there's a lot of times I know stuff that's happening with Tennessee, and I will shape my conversation around it to present it like, hey, this could be a possibility. And then it happens, saying, and I can always go back and say, well, like I said on Tuesday's show, I don't try not to do that, but I do it from time to time. So that's all Joe Lunardi was doing. I mean, that's really all Joe Lunardi was doing. He was taking the information that was given to him, and he was just saying, hey, Tennessee's, he did a horrible job explaining it. Okay. I mean, it was cringeworthy. But he basically just said, hey, Tennessee will not be a 2 seed. I can tell you that right now. Why? Well, yada, yada, yada made no sense. He's just saying Tennessee won't be a 2 line because he knew Tennessee would make that 2 line. So I don't believe Joe Lunardi hates Tennessee. I just think he did a very poor job of trying to make his case. Chandler, what are your realistic expectations for the Vols in the tournament now that the bracket is out and you've had time to digest? Expectations, I don't know, guys. This is Tennessee athletics. I'm not picking Tennessee to go to the Elite Eight of the Final Four simply because, just like I didn't pick Tennessee to win the SEC tournament. I don't know. When I feel like you're too close to the situation sometimes because every deficiency with your team as well. Just like every good thing about your team. I also know Tennessee athletics. I know the history there. I've also seen this team shoot 27% from the field. Tennessee will be challenged in the Sweet 16 against Villanova. I do believe Tennessee can beat Villanova this time. I do believe that. I know Villanova handed it to Tennessee earlier in the season, but I do see them happening. If you win that game, you advance on Arizona. That's the team you've already beaten. It's not a gimme. Don't get me wrong. You got the blueprint to how you're going to beat Arizona if you get there. So realistically, Tennessee can get to the Final Four. It absolutely can. I think it'll fall out somewhere between Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. I know that doesn't answer your question, but that's the weekend, right? Sweet 16, Elite Eight. I think Tennessee, if I'm picking right now, and again, I picked against Tennessee to win the SEC tournament, and I said, I'm doing this for y'all. You're welcome. I'll do the same thing here. I'll pick Tennessee to go to the Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. But we will fill out my official bracket on the show later this week before game day on Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll go on to John. John wants to know, there seems to be a lot of hype right now in football recruiting. Do you think Nico Iamaleava is a real possibility? If so, what time frame for a commitment do you see? If we land him or other big or who are some other big names to watch out for? I do think Nico is a real possibility. I think Tennessee's done excellent work there. Joey Halsey does fantastic work. Josh Heupel, Alex Golish. The family coming in last weekend and spending 4 days in Knoxville was huge. I think Tennessee went from an afterthought to being the leaders, in my opinion. I do. At first, I'm not saying commitment to Tennessee. I'm just saying commitment in general for Nico. I didn't think it was going to come for quite some time. I think the talk is now that he wants to make a commitment sooner rather than later. So I think Tennessee's in great shape. I really do. Now, if Tennessee were to get Nico Iamaleava, holding on to that commitment, number one, will be a challenge, right? Because it's so early in the process. Number two, of course, it would attract other big fish because big receivers, big linemen, running backs, they want to play with a winner. They want to play with a winner that will help them get to the National Football League. So, yeah, I don't have any names right now, but I would say if that were to happen, and I believe Tennessee's in great shape there, I really do, I do expect an uptick in recruiting because people want to come play for a winner and, will help them churn out some money, down the line in the National Football League. So, John, great stuff there. Really, really do appreciate it. And that will do it for this edition of Locked On Vols. A little late here, but some great stuff. A really strong show, I feel like. I can't thank you enough for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen. Ryan Tracy, former NFL quarterback Eric Crocker. They dive into the NFL front offices, college prospects. They bring it to life. That is the Locked On NFL Draft every single day. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Guys, thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Subscribe on YouTube. Continue to dial in every single day as Tennessee prepares for its tournament run. As a 3 seed, it'll get going Thursday afternoon at 2:45 Eastern Time. We will talk again tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much for your Twitter Tuesday submissions and for your time every single day. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody.